The forest was bleeding. Not in the way mortals understood bleeding. No scarlet puddles on moss-covered ground. No visible wounds gaping in tree trunks. This bleeding happened in the spaces between heartbeats, in the silence where sound should live, but didn't. Selene felt it the moment she stepped past the boundary stones. The air pressed against her skin like a held breath. The birds had stopped singing 3 steps ago. Even the wind moved differently here, sliding through branches with the caution of something that knew it didn't belong. She adjusted the woven basket on her arm and kept walking. The elders said the Moonshadow Range was forbidden for a reason. They said darkness pooled in the hollows where sunlight never touched. They said wolves hunted there, ancient and merciless wolves that remembered when humans were prey. They said a lot of things. Selene's grandmother said different. Thessaly had taught her that some rules existed because people feared what they didn't understand. That sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't what lurked in the shadows, but what people did to keep themselves safe from their own ignorance. Still, Selene's hands trembled as she reached for the moonbell flowers growing along the streambed. The petals glowed faintly silver, even in daylight, their centers dark as bruises. She needed them for the sleeping draft. Old Maris needed the one that would ease the pain in her joints through the winter months. The moonbells only grew here in soil, touched by something older than memory. Selene's fingers had just closed around the first stem when the forest screamed. Not with sound, with absence. Every living thing went silent at once. The insects, the rustling leaves, the distant trickle of water over stones. Even her own heartbeat seemed to pause, waiting. Then the howl came. It started low, a vibration she felt in her bones before her ears registered it. Deep and raw and wrong. Not a hunting cry, not a warning. Something else. Something that tasted like copper and desperation in the last breath before drowning. Selene's basket fell from her hands. The elders' voices rose in her mind, sharp and certain. Turn back. Run. Go home while your legs still remember how. But underneath those voices, another sound whispered. Softer, more insistent. Pain. Pure and terrible and achingly familiar. She had heard that sound before, though never from a wolf. She had heard it in her mother's final hours when sickness had hollowed her out from the inside. She had heard it in the silence after her father never came home from the northern roads. She had heard it in her own throat on the nights she woke gasping from dreams she couldn't remember. The howl came again, closer now, breaking in the middle like something shattered. Selene's feet moved before her mind caught up. She ran toward the sound. Branches clawed at her dress, roots tried to trip her. The forest itself seemed to push back, to warn her, to beg her to stop. But something in her chest had cracked open the moment she heard that howl, and she couldn't close it, couldn't turn away. The clearing appeared suddenly, violently, as if the trees had parted out of respect or horror, or both. Silver light pooled in the center moonlight that had no business existing in mid-afternoon. And in that impossible light lay a wolf, not a wolf, an impossibility. He was massive, larger than any natural creature had the right to be. His fur gleamed like liquid metal silver, threaded through with something darker. Something that rippled when he breathed. Blood matted his coat, spreading in slow pulses that matched the frantic rhythm of his heartbeat. But it was the magic that made Selene's breath stop. 4 iron spikes pinned the earth around him, each one glowing with sick blue light. Between them, runes flickered and sparked, forming chains of pure energy that wrapped around the wolf's body. She could see them cutting into him, invisible but brutal, crushing him from the inside out. A trap. Hunter magic. Illegal and cruel and designed to do one thing. Kill. The wolf's golden eyes flickered open. Even dimmed by agony, they burned with intelligence and power, and something that looked horribly like acceptance. He was dying. He knew it, and he had stopped fighting. Selene's knees hit the ground before she realized she'd moved. Don't touch him, her mind screamed. He's a predator. He'll kill you the moment you get close enough. But her hands were already reaching, already trembling, as they hovered over the nearest spike. The wolf's gaze fixed on her. She watched recognition flicker there, then confusion, then something that made her heart crack open wider. Please, those eyes said, not for me, for you. Run. She didn't run. Her fingers closed around the first spike. The runes shrieked, blue lightning dancing across her skin in patterns that should have burned but didn't. The magic recognized something in her touch. Something that made it hesitate, made it listen. Selene pulled. The spike came free with a sound like breaking glass. The wolf convulsed, a whimper tearing from his throat that sounded far too human. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry, just hold on. The second spike fought harder. The runes wrapped around her wrist, testing, tasting, trying to understand what she was. But they couldn't hold her. She yanked it free, tears streaming down her face as the wolf's pain echoed through her chest like it was her own. Third spike. Fourth spike. Her hands bled, now small cuts where the magic had kissed too hard. But she didn't stop. When the last rune shattered, the clearing went silent. Too silent. The wolf collapsed. His massive body jerked once violently, then went still. No, Solen's voice broke on the word. No, no, no. Stay with me. She pressed her hands to his fur, feeling for a heartbeat she wasn't sure existed anymore. His chest barely moved. His eyes had closed. The blood flow had slowed to nothing, and she didn't know if that meant he was healing or dying. He wasn't shifting. That terrified her more than anything. The story said wolves shifted back to human form when they were close to death, when their animal side could no longer hold on. But he remained frozen in this in-between state, neither fully alive nor fully gone. Solen's throat tightened. She didn't know healing magic, didn't know how to mend what the runes had broken. All she had were hands that trembled and a heart that refused to accept what was happening. And then her grandmother's voice whispered through her memory, soft as moonlight. When you don't know what to do, little birds sing. Your voice carries what your heart cannot speak. Solen had never told anyone, but she heard music in everything. In rain on rooftops, in wind through wheat fields, in the rhythmic thud of her own pulse. Her grandmother said it was a gift. Her mother had called it a curse. Solen only knew it made her different in ways the village didn't trust. But right now, different was all she had. She lowered her forehead to the wolf's feeling, the faint warmth still clinging to his fur. And she sang, no words, just sound. A melody that rose from some deep place inside her, pulled from the well of loneliness and longing and the fierce, irrational need to keep this creature alive. The first note trembled, the second steadied. By the third, something in the air shifted. The ground beneath them began to hum. Solen kept singing, her voice weaving through the clearing like golden thread. The melody her grandmother had taught her, the one she hummed when Solen couldn't sleep, when nightmares pressed too close, when the world felt too sharp and cold. The wolf's breathing changed, slowed, deepened. His heartbeat steadied beneath her palm, matching the rhythm of her song note for note, beat for beat, as if they were two instruments learning to play in harmony. Light bloomed behind Solen's closed eyelids, not blue like the cruel runes, not harsh. This light was warm and golden and alive, pulsing in time with the melody spilling from her throat. The last fragments of binding magic dissolved into smoke. The wolf's body shuddered, not from pain this time, from surrender. And then light exploded. Solen gasped, falling backward as power surged through the clearing. Bones cracked, fur retracted. The massive wolf form collapsed inward, reshaping itself into something smaller, something human. When the light faded, a man lay before her. He was breathtaking in the way dangerous things often are. Broad shoulders and carved muscle, a bit marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. His hair fell in dark waves threaded with silver, the same impossible color as his wolf form. Blood still stained his skin, painting him in crimson shadows. But it was his face that stopped her heart. Strong and angular, marked by suffering, but not broken by it. His eyes remained closed, dark lashes resting against the cheekbones that looked like they'd been cut from stone. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, each one a small miracle. He was alive. Solen pressed a hand to her own chest, trying to calm the wild hammering there. Her voice had done this. Somehow, impossibly, her song had broken magic that should have been unbreakable. The man's eyes opened, gold, molten and burning even in his weakened state, fixing on her with an intensity that made the world tilt. His lips parted, his voice came out hoarse and breaking, but the words were clear, deliberate, weighted with something that felt like fate. Your voice, he rasped, his gaze locked on hers, like she was the only thing anchoring him to the world, is the only home I've ever known. Solen, his breath caught. She opened her mouth to ask what he meant, how that was possible, who he was. But consciousness was already leaving his eyes, pulling him down into darkness. His hand moved, reaching for hers with the last of his strength. Their fingers barely touched before he collapsed again, unconscious, but breathing, alive, but broken. And Solen sat there in the blood-soaked clearing, knowing with absolute certainty that nothing in her life would ever be the same. Moving an unconscious man through a forest was harder than the songs made it sound. Solen managed by sheer stubborn will and the desperate certainty that leaving him in that clearing would mean his death. She half-dragged, half-carried him, his arms slung across her shoulders, his weight pressing her into the earth with every step. He murmured in his unconscious state, words she couldn't understand, a language that sounded like wind through deep caves, ancient and beautiful and utterly foreign. By the time she saw her grandmother's cottage through the trees, her muscles screamed and her lungs burned. But she didn't stop, didn't rest. The door swung open before she reached it. Solen dragged the man inside, lowering him onto the low bed near the hearth with more care than grace. He groaned softly but didn't wake. Her hands shook as she fetched water and clean cloths. The wounds on his chest were deep, angry things that wept blood with each breath. She cleaned them as gently as she could, her touch light but steady. He was beautiful even like this, even broken and bleeding and vulnerable. There was something regal about him, something that spoke of power held carefully in check. Selene pressed a damp cloth to the gash along his ribs, and his eyes flickered open. Golden, aware, fixed on her with that same burning intensity. "You're safe," she whispered, not knowing if it was true. "You're in my home. You need to rest." His jaw clenched. His voice came out rough, strained. "You shouldn't have saved me." The words struck like a physical blow. "You were dying." "I know." His eyes held hers. "But you were safe, and now you're not." "What does that mean?" He tried to push himself up, failed, fell back with a curse that sounded like grinding stone. "The hunters who set that trap, they'll know someone broke it. They'll come looking. Then they'll find you gone. They'll find you." His hand is shot out, catching her wrist with surprising strength. Not painful, desperate. "They'll think you're my accomplice. They'll kill you for helping me." Solene's heart hammered, but she didn't pull away. "Who are you?" Something flickered across his face, pain, resignation, fear. "My name is Caden." He released her wrist, his hand falling back to the bed. "And I'm the last person you should have risked your life to save." Before she could ask why, his eyes slid closed again, consciousness slipping away like water through her fingers. Solena sat back, her mind racing. Caden. The name tasted like smoke and starlight, foreign on her tongue, but somehow right. She should have been afraid. Should have run to the village, told the elders what she'd found, let them deal with the impossible man bleeding on her grandmother's bed. But when she looked at him, all she felt was the echo of what he'd said in her bones. What did that mean? How could her voice mean anything to a stranger? How had her song broken magic that shouldn't bend to anything human? The questions spiraled unanswered and unanswerable. Outside, the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Long shadows crept across the floor, reaching for Caden like grasping fingers. And in the distance, so faint Solene almost missed it, a howl rose. Then another. Then a dozen more, layered and urgent, converging from every direction. They were coming. Solene's breath caught. She moved to the window, peering through the slats. The forest had gone still again, that same terrible silence that preceded danger. Behind her, Caden stirred. His voice came out, sharp, alert, despite his wounds. "How many do you hear?" She turned. His eyes were open, burning gold in the firelight. "I don't know. Many." "Are they howling in sequence or in chaos?" "Sequence, I think. Why does that matter?" Something in his expression softened. Not relief, something sadder. "It means their pack. My pack." He struggled to sit up, every movement agony written across his face. "They felt what you did. When you broke the binding magic, when you sang for me, the power rippled through the bond we all share." "I don't understand." "You will." He swung his legs off the bed, swaying but upright. "When they get here, stay behind me. Don't speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, don't be afraid." And us. "I'm not afraid." He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "You should be," he said softly. "Because what you did tonight, it changed everything." The howls grew closer, louder, more insistent. Caden moved to stand, placing himself between Solene and the door, despite the blood still seeping through his borrowed shirt. "When they come through that door," he said, voice low and certain, "they're not going to hurt you, but they are going to judge you. And what they decide in the next few minutes will determine whether you live the rest of your life in freedom or in chains." Solene's pulse raced, but she lifted her chin. "What will they judge me for?" "For being the one thing our world thought was extinct." His eyes met hers, golden and ancient and terribly sad. "For having a voice that can command the very soul of a wolf." The door burst open. 4 massive wolves poured inside, their forms shifting mid-stride. Fur retracted, bones reformed. By the time they crossed the threshold, 4 people stood where beasts had been moments before. 3 men and 1 woman, all of them radiating power that made the air thick and hard to breathe. All of them focused entirely on Solene. The woman stepped forward first. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark skin marked by silver scars that caught the firelight. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, sharp and assessing. "Caden," her voice was deep, controlled. Not angry, worse, disappointed. "What have you done?" "What I had to Thorn." The woman Thorn circled slowly. Not threatening, evaluating. Her gaze swept over Solene, reading her like text on a page. "This is the human whose voice shattered binding runes." "Yes." "This is the girl who made your wolf bellow." Caden's jaw clenched. "Yes." Thorn stopped in front of Solene, close enough that Solène could see the flecks of amber in her gray eyes, close enough to kill. "What's your name, girl?" Solene's throat felt tight, but she forced the words out. "Solène. Solène." Thorn repeated it slowly, tasting it. "Do you know what you are? Human." "Wrong." Thorn glanced at Caden. "She doesn't know." "She hasn't had time to know," Caden said. "This happened less than 2 hours ago." One of the men spoke, younger than Thorn, with copper hair and eyes like molten bronze. "We felt the ripple across the entire territory. Every alpha within 50 miles felt it. You can't tell me she doesn't understand the magnitude of what she did." "I didn't do anything," Solène said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I just sang. He was dying and I sang and the magic broke. That's all." Silence crashed through the room. The four wolves exchanged glances that spoke volumes in a language Solène couldn't read. Then Thorn stepped back, not in retreat, but in respect. "She carries the mark," Thorn said softly. "I can smell it on her. Old power. Ancient song." "What mark?" Solène demanded. "What are you talking about?" The air in the cottage shifted, grew colder, heavier. The temperature dropped so fast Solène saw her breath fog. And then he appeared. Not walked in, appeared. One moment the space near the hearth was empty. The next a figure stood there, composed of smoke and starlight and something that looked like memory-given form. He was massive, not in physical size, though he towered over all of them, in presence, in age. In the weight of existence that pressed down on the room like a physical thing, his eyes were silver, ancient, knowing. When he spoke, his voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The first melody awakens." Solène's knees weakened. Caden moved closer to her, not touching but anchoring her with his presence. "Garen," Caden said, and there was something like reverence in his voice. "You haven't appeared to the living in a generation. I appear now because I must." The ancient being's gaze fixed on Solène. "Child, do you know what song you sang tonight?" "A lullaby. My grandmother taught me." "Your grandmother taught you the opening key." "I don't understand." Garen moved closer and Solène realized he wasn't solid. Light passed through him, refracting like water. He was a spirit, a memory, something caught between worlds. Long ago, Garen said, before wolves and humans forgot how to speak the same language, there existed songkeepers. Humans whose voices could touch the very essence of our kind. They could heal us, shape the magic that runs through our veins. And when an alpha's soul began to fracture under the weight of darkness and rage, a songkeeper's voice could anchor him, keep him whole. Solène's breath came faster. "That's just a story." "Is it?" Garen gestured to Caden. "Then explain how you broke alpha binding magic with nothing but your voice. Explain how you pulled an alpha back from death's door when he had already surrendered." "I can't." "You can't because you don't yet understand what you are." Garen's voice softened. "You are Voxer, the heart voice, the soul call." The word hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Voxer. Solène shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. I'm just a girl from the border villages. I have no magic, no power. I'm nobody." "You saved my life," Caden said quietly. "With your voice, with your song. You did what should have been impossible." She turned to him, desperate for this to make sense. "But how?" White pain flickered across his face. "Because when I was dying, when I had given up, when I was ready to let go, your song called me back. Not with force, with peace, like finding something I'd been searching for my entire life without knowing I was looking." Solène's mind reeled. This was too much, too big, too impossible. "What happens now?" she whispered. The ancient spirit's expression grew grave. "Now you face the council. They will have felt the awakening. They will demand answers. And they will fear you." "Fear me? Why would they fear me?" "Because Garen said you are power they cannot control. An alpha bound to a Voxer answers to no one but her. And that terrifies those who built their authority on dominance and fear." Caden's hand found hers. The contact sent warmth racing up her arms, settling in her chest like a second heartbeat. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "You can't promise that." "I can, and I do." His eyes burned into hers. "Whatever happens, whatever they threaten, I will stand between you and harm." Thorn cleared her throat. "The council sent word. They demand your presence at Alpha Hall by dawn tomorrow. Both of you." Solène's stomach dropped. "What if I refuse?" "They'll come for you," one of the other wolves said, "and they won't ask nicely." The cottage door opened. Everyone turned hands, going to weapons that hadn't been visible moments before. But the figure in the doorway was small, elderly, familiar. Thessaly stepped inside, her silver hair catching the firelight, her dark eyes sweeping the room with the calm of someone who had seen far stranger things than wolves in her kitchen. So, her grandmother said, closing the door behind her. They finally came. Solène stared. Grandmother. Thessaly set down her basket of evening herbs, moving to the hearth with practiced ease. I knew this day would arrive. I hoped I'd have more time to prepare you. But fate has never been patient. You knew, Solène's voice cracked. You knew what I suspected. Thessaly began preparing tea as if four wolves and an ancient spirit weren't crowding her small home. The song I taught you wasn't just a lullaby, child. It was a test, a key, a gift and a curse wrapped together. Caden stepped forward. Who are you? Thessaly's eyes met his, and Solène saw something flicker there. Recognition, sadness, old grief given new life. I am what your Voxer will become if fate is cruel, Thessaly said. I am the last songkeeper, the one who survived. The room went utterly still. Garen spoke, his voice filled with something like awe. Thessaly, the lost melody. You still live. I still breathe, Thessaly corrected. Living is something else entirely. She poured tea with steady hands. 40 years ago, I was bonded to an alpha. The council feared our power. They forced us apart. My alpha died in a war they sent him to alone and broken. I ran, hid, survived. Tears burned behind Solène's eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped the bloodline had ended with me. That you would live a normal life. That you would never have to carry the weight I carried. Thessaly touched Solène's face with a gentle hand. But the song chose you. It always chooses. And now you must decide what to do with it. I don't know what to do. Then let me tell you what I know. Thessaly's voice hardened. The lullaby I taught you is the opening key of the first melody. There are three parts in total: opening, binding, severance. Caden inhaled sharply. The first melody is real. As real as the bond you feel pulling you toward my granddaughter. Where Thessaly met his gaze. The opening awakens. The binding anchors. The severance ends. Ends what? Solène whispered. Whatever needs ending. Thessaly's expression grew grave. But there's something else you need to know. The Dreadborn King hunted songkeepers because our voices could destroy him. He killed every Voxer he could find. And if the ancient texts are true, if the prophecies hold weight, he will rise again. And when he does, he'll hunt you. The words landed like stones in deep water, rippling out in waves of silence. Thorn spoke first. The Dreadborn King is a myth. So were Voxers, Garen said quietly. Until tonight. Thessaly handed Solène a cup of tea. The council will try to separate you from your alpha. They'll claim it's for your protection. Don't believe them. What they fear is power they can't control. What they want is to bind you to their will. What should I do? Face them. Thessaly's voice was iron wrapped in velvet. Stand beside your alpha. Let them see that you are not some fragile thing to be protected or controlled. You are Voxer. You are the song that heals and the voice that commands. You are more powerful than they will ever admit. Solène looked at Caden. He was watching her with an intensity that made her chest tight. Will you stand with me? She asked. Until my last breath, he said without hesitation. And beyond if the fates allow it. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it a sound that made every wolf in the room tense. Howls, dozens of them, growing closer. Thorn moved to the window. More packs are coming. Word is spreading fast. They're coming to see the Voxer, Garen said, to witness what they thought was legend made flesh. Caden's hand tightened on Solène's. They'll want to test her, to see if the bond is real. Let them try, Solène heard herself say. The words came from some deep place in Aedhir, the same place the song had come from. I'm done hiding, done running. If I'm what you say I am, if I have this power, then I'll use it, on my terms. Thessaly smiled, sad and proud. That's my girl. The first shadows appeared at the edge of the clearing, massive forms moving between trees, eyes glowing in the darkness. The cottage door shook, not from wind, from power, from wolves who wanted in. Caden moved to stand directly in front of Solène, his body a wall between her and whatever was coming. Remember, he said softly just for her, whatever happens, you are not alone, not anymore. Solène's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't step back, didn't hide. When the door burst open and wolves poured inside, filling the small space with fur and fangs and ancient power, she stood tall. And when the largest of them, a silver-coated alpha with eyes like winter storms, shifted into human form and spoke the words that would change everything, Solène was ready. The council decrees that the Voxer must present herself at Alpha Hall by dawn. the messenger said. Refusal will be considered an act of war against all pacts. Compliance will be rewarded with protection and truth. Selene met his gaze without flinching. Tell the council, she said, her voice steady and clear, that I will come, but not as a supplicant, not as something to be judged and controlled. I will come as what I am. And if they try to cage me, they will learn exactly what a Voxer's voice can do. The messenger's eyes widened. Behind Selene, she heard Thorn's sharp intake of breath, felt Caden's surprise and something else. Pride. The messenger bowed, not deeply, but enough. I will deliver your message. He and his wolves departed as quickly as they'd come, leaving silence in their wake. Thessaly began gathering supplies, moving with the efficiency of someone who had fled before and knew exactly what to pack. We leave before dawn, she said. The council won't expect you early. Use that. What will they do? Selene asked. They'll test you, interrogate you, try to find weaknesses they can exploit. Thessaly met her eyes. They'll want to see if the bond is real. And if it is, then they'll try to control it. Control you. That's what they do. Thessaly's expression hardened. But you are not your grandmother. You won't make my mistakes. You'll fight. Caden spoke, his voice rough. She won't have to fight alone. No, Thessaly said, looking between them. She won't. Garen's form began to fade, becoming translucent in the firelight. One more thing, Songkeeper, he said to Selene. The bond you feel forming with this alpha. It will grow stronger, deeper, until you can feel his heartbeat as your own, until his pain becomes yours and your joy becomes his. This is the way of Voxers and their wolves. Do not fear it. Embrace it. Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of rain in wild places. Thorn began checking weapons, her movements precise and deadly. We'll escort you to Alpha Hall, 4 of us, enough to show strength but not provoke. Thank you, Selene said. Thorn's expression softened slightly. Don't thank me yet. You have no idea what you're walking into. The night deepened. Selene helped her grandmother pack her hands, moving on autopilot while her mind raced. Voxer, Songkeeper, the one whose voice could command wolves. It still didn't feel real. None of this felt real. But when Caden's hand brushed hers in passing when their eyes met, and she felt that pull in her chest, that strange recognition, she knew. Real or not, impossible or not, this was happening. And tomorrow she would face the council, and whatever judgment they brought. She just hoped she was strong enough to survive it. Outside, the moon rose full and bright, casting silver shadows across the world. And in the distance, barely audible, a whisper threaded through the wind. The Dreadborn wakes, the melody rises, and the song that will end or save them all has only just begun. Dawn came cold and pale, bleeding gray light through the forest canopy. Selene had not slept. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw golden wolf eyes staring at her from the darkness, felt the phantom weight of magic breaking beneath her hands, heard her own voice singing words she didn't remember choosing. Voxer. The word tasted like copper and starlight on her tongue. She stood at the cottage window, watching shadows retreat as morning crept forward. Behind her, Caden moved with the careful silence of a predator, trying not to disturb prey. He had spent the night standing guard, refusing rest despite his wounds. You should eat something, he said quietly. She didn't turn. I'm not hungry. Fear has a way of stealing appetite. He stepped closer, not touching, never touching without permission. But you'll need your strength today. Will I? She finally looked at him. His face was drawn exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. But those eyes still burned gold, still watched her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. Or will the council decide I'm too dangerous and end this before it begins? They won't. You can't know that. I can. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Because if they try to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, Selene, I am very hard to kill. The way he said her name made something in her chest tighten, like it was sacred, like it mattered more than all the titles and prophecies combined. You barely know me, she whispered. Why would you fight for me? Caden's jaw clenched. A muscle jumped there, tension radiating through his entire frame. When he spoke, each word came carefully, as if he was admitting something he'd tried to deny. Because when I was dying, when I had given up, your voice didn't just call me back. It showed me what I'd been missing my entire life. He took a breath that shook on the exhale. Peace, purpose. In the space of one song, you gave me both. Selene's throat tightened. That's not real. That's just the bond talking. Is it? His eyes searched hers. Then why do I feel it even now? Why does every instinct I have scream at me to keep you safe, to stand between you and anything that might harm you? She had no answer, only the echo of her own heartbeat racing faster than it should. The cottage door opened. Thorn entered already armed and alert, her dark skin gleaming with the sheen of someone who had been running patrol since before sunrise. The council's escort is half a mile out, she said. We need to leave now. Thessaly emerged from the back room, a small pack slung over her shoulder. Her silver hair was braided tight, her expression carved from stone and old grief. Remember what I told you, she said to Selene. Show no fear, speak only truth, and never ever let them see you break. What if I do break? Thessaly's hand cupped her cheek gentle despite the hardness in her voice. Then you break like steel breaks, with heat and pressure, and the promise that what emerges will be stronger than what went in. Outside, the sound of approaching wolves grew louder. Paws on earth, breath like distant thunder. Caden moved to the door, positioning himself where he could see both Selene and the approaching danger. His body language shifted, becoming something predatory and protective at once. The escort arrived in wolf form, 7 of them, massive and powerful, their fur ranging from midnight black to pale silver. They circled the cottage once, twice, scenting the air. Then they shifted, bone cracked, flesh reformed. 7 humans stood where wolves had been moments before, all of them dressed in the dark leathers of council enforcers. The leader stepped forward, a woman tall and broad-shouldered with a face like carved oak and eyes that had seen too much violence to ever soften again. Selene of the border villages, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of formal decree. You are summoned to appear before the Council of Alphas. You will come willingly or you will come bound. Choose. Selene lifted her chin. I'll walk on my own feet. Then walk. The enforcer's gaze slid to Caden. The Alpha may accompany, but he carries no authority here. He is witness only. Caden's growl was so low Selene felt it more than heard it, a vibration in the air that made her skin prickle. Caden, she said softly, just his name. But it was enough. He looked at her, and something in his expression cracked open, vulnerability flashing through before he locked it down again. I'm here, he said. Whatever happens, I'm here. They began the journey. The forest path wound through ancient trees, their bark marked with symbols Selene didn't recognize. Protection runes, Thessaly had called them. Old magic meant to keep humans out and wolves contained. But Selene walked through them without resistance. The magic recognized something in her, something that made it hesitate, made it bow. Thorn walked beside her, close enough to intervene, but far enough to give space. You're handling this better than I expected, Thorn said quietly. Am I? Selene's hands trembled inside her sleeves. Because I feel like I'm walking toward my own execution. If they wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Thorn's voice held no comfort, only fact. They want answers. They want to understand what you are. And yes, they want to control you if they can. But dead, no, you're too valuable. I don't want to be valuable. None of us get what we want. Thorn's gaze slid sideways. I wanted to be pack healer. Instead, I'm a warrior who's killed more wolves than she's saved. We adapt. We survive. That's all we can do. The trees began to thin. Ahead, massive stone structures rose from the earth like ancient bones breaking through skin. Alpha Hall. It was not a building. It was a declaration. Carved from black stone that drank light rather than reflected it, the hall stretched 3 stories high, crowned with spires that reached for the sky like accusing fingers. Wolves lined the approach, dozens of them, hundreds, all in human form, all watching with eyes that glowed faintly in the gray morning. They were silent, utterly silent, waiting. Selene's steps faltered. Caden was there immediately, his presence solid at her back, not touching, just there. They're watching to see if you run, he murmured. Don't. She didn't. She walked forward with her spine straight and her fear locked behind her teeth. The hall doors opened without sound, revealing darkness beyond. The escort led them inside. The council chamber was circular, its walls carved with images of wolves and moons in battles long forgotten. 7 thrones ringed the space, each one occupied by an alpha whose power pressed against the air like physical weight. But it was the man in the center throne who commanded attention. Malachi. He was older than the others, his hair more silver than black, his face lined with scars that spoke of wars survived. But his eyes were the color of old gold, sharp and assessing and utterly cold. Selene of the border villages, he said, his voice echoing off stone. You stand accused of wielding forbidden magic. How do you answer? I answer that I saved a life. Selene said, her voice steadier than she felt. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty. Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves watching from the gallery above. Malachi's expression didn't change. You broke alpha binding magic. Runes designed by our greatest craftsmen, powered by blood and will and ancient words. You shattered them with a song. I didn't know they were unbreakable. Ignorance is not innocence. He leaned forward. Explain how you accomplished this impossibility. I can't explain it. I sang. The magic broke. That's all I know. That's all you admit to knowing. Malachi's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps there's more you're hiding. Perhaps you've been trained in dark arts. Perhaps you serve forces that seek to undermine pack law. I serve no one. Anger flared hot in Solen's chest. I'm a healer's assistant from a village so small, it doesn't have a name. I have no training, no allegiance, no agenda beyond helping people who need it. And yet you possess power that hasn't been seen in generations. Malachi stood descending from his throne with measured steps. Power that could be used as a weapon. Power that makes you dangerous. Caden moved forward, but Thorn's hand on his arm stopped him. Malachi circled Solen slowly like a predator assessing prey. Tell me, girl, when you sang, what did you feel? Solen's jaw clenched. I felt like I was drowning, like I was breaking apart, like I was dying right along with him. And after, when the magic broke, peace, for a moment everything went quiet, everything stopped hurting. Malachi paused in front of her close enough that she could smell the scent of pine and old smoke on his clothes. You felt the bond snap into place, he said softly. Didn't you? She said nothing. Answer the question. I felt something, she admitted. I don't know what to call it. Call it what it is. Malachi's voice turned sharp. A chain, a leash, a collar around the neck of an alpha who should bow to no one. Caden snarled, the sound tearing through the chamber like a blade. She commands nothing, he growled. The bond is not slavery, it's recognition. My wolf knows what she is, and he chooses to stand beside her. Your wolf is corrupted. Malachi's gaze didn't leave Solen, twisted by magic that should not exist. We cannot allow this bond to continue. Fear spiked cold in Solen's chest. What does that mean? It means we have a choice to make. Malachi gestured, and two enforcers stepped forward, carrying between them an ornate silver cage. Inside runes glowed the same sickly blue as the ones that had trapped Caden. We can sever the bond cleanly. Place you in containment until we determine what to do with you. Or what? Lolen demanded. Malachi's smile was a knife edge. Or you prove the bond is real. Here, now, in front of the council. Silence crashed through the chamber. How? Caden asked, his voice deadly quiet. She sings, Malachi said, and we see if your wolf truly bows. Thorn stepped forward. That's not a test. That's a humiliation. That's a demonstration. Malachi's eyes glinted with something cold and hungry. If the bond is as powerful as legends claim, a single note should be enough to bring an alpha to his knees. If she can do that, we'll know she's truly Voxer. If she can't, he shrugged, then she's simply a girl with a parlor trick, and we can dispose of her accordingly. Solen's breath came faster. Dispose of her, as if she were trash. As if her life meant nothing beyond what she could prove to these cold-eyed judges. I won't do it, she said. Then you choose the cage. No, Caden's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You want proof, I'll give you proof. But not like this. Not with her, forced to perform like some trained animal. You don't dictate terms here, Caden. Malachi's voice hardened. You're barely tolerated as it is. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Try it. Caden's eyes blazed gold, his power flooding the chamber until the air vibrated with it. Touch me. Touch her. See what happens. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Malachi smiled. And that smile was wrong. Too wide, too cold. His eyes flashed just for a heartbeat, from old gold to sickly yellow. Soleni saw it, only her, and her blood went ice cold. Very well, Malachi said, his voice different now, layered, as if two people spoke at once. We'll reconvene at sunset. The girl will be kept in protective custody until then. Separate from her alpha. Let's see how strong this bond truly is when distance divides them. No, Caden lunged forward, but enforcers were already there, 6 of them holding him back with combined strength. You can't separate us. Not now. The bond is too new, too unstable. Which is precisely why we must test it. Malachi's smile widened. Take her to the North Tower. Alone. No visitors. No exceptions. Hands grabbed Solenne's arms. She tried to pull away, but they were too strong, too many. Caden, she cried out, fear breaking through her control. His eyes found hers across the chamber. Gold burning bright enough to hurt. I will come for you, he vowed, his voice carrying over the chaos. I swear it, Solenne, I will come. Then they dragged her away, and the last thing she saw was Caden fighting against impossible odds, his wolf rising in his eyes, desperate and wild and utterly helpless. The North Tower was cold, stone walls, iron door, A single window, too high and too narrow for escape. Solène sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands trembling in her lap. The runes carved into the walls glowed faintly, pulsing with magic designed to contain, to suppress, to silence. She could feel them pressing against her, trying to smother whatever power lived inside her chest. But they couldn't quite reach it. The song sat deeper than magic could touch, coiled in the space between her heartbeat and her breath. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt strange in this room, compressed and stretched at once. The door opened without warning. Malachai entered, closing it softly behind him. Solène scrambled to her feet, her back hitting the wall. "Stay away from me." "Peace, child." Raised his hands, palms out. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" "To talk." He moved closer, his steps measured and calm, too calm. "To offer you a choice. I don't want anything from you. Not even your freedom." His head tilted, and again, just for a moment, his eyes flashed that sickly yellow. "Not even your grandmother's life." Solène's heart stopped. "What? Your grandmother Thessaly? She's currently being held in the lower chambers. Under guard. Under threat." Malachai's smile was all wrong, his teeth too sharp. "One word from me, and she dies. Slowly. Painfully. While you listen from up here. You're lying." He pulled a small object from his pocket. A silver bracelet. Thessaly's bracelet, the one she never removed. "She fought when we took her. Broke 2 guards' noses. I admire that kind of spirit. Shame it will be wasted." Rage and terror warred in Solène's chest. "What do you want?" "Your song." Malachai stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the veins in his eyes threaded with something dark and writhing. "Sing for me, the full melody, the one your grandmother taught you." "Why? Because I need it." His voice dropped, layered with harmonics that didn't belong to any human throat. "Because the power sleeping in your voice is the key to awakening something far greater than your small mind can comprehend." Understanding crashed through Solène like ice water. "You're not Malachai," she whispered. "Not anymore." The thing wearing Malachai's face smiled wider. "Clever girl. The council leader is still in here screaming in the dark corners of his own mind. But I'm driving now, and I have been for months." "What are you?" "I am Shadow given purpose. I am the Dreadborn King's will," his voice, his hand reaching across death to reclaim what was stolen from me. The creature's eyes glowed full yellow, now sickly and wrong. "Your song will complete my resurrection. Sing the binding melody, and I will spare your grandmother. Refuse, and she dies screaming your name." Solène's mind raced. The binding melody. Thessaly had warned her about it. It would anchor trap seal. If she sang it for this creature, she would give it exactly what it wanted. But if she didn't, Thessaly would die. "I need proof she's alive," Solène said, her voice shaking. The creature laughed. "Bargaining, how delightfully mortal." It pulled a small communication stone from its pocket, pressing it. Thessaly's voice emerged, strained but alive. "Solène, don't you dare give this thing what it wants. I didn't survive 40 years of hiding to die protecting you from making the same mistakes I did. Grandmother, be smarter than I was. Be braver. Be..." The creature closed its fist, cutting off the sound. "Touching. Now sing." Solène's throat tightened. She had no weapons, no magic beyond her voice. No way to fight this thing that had corrupted a counselor and threatened everything she loved. But she had her grandmother's words echoing in her ears. "Be smarter than I was." And suddenly Solène understood. The binding melody would trap the Dreadborn's essence, yes, but it would also bind her voice, seal it, lock it away for a time. If she couldn't sing, the creature couldn't use her to fully resurrect. It was a sacrifice, a terrible one, but it would buy time. Give Caden a chance to find her. Give Thessaly a chance to escape. "All right," she said softly. "I'll sing." The creature's smile was victorious. Wise choice. Solène closed her eyes, reached for that place deep inside where the song lived. The binding melody was different from the lullaby. Darker, older, full of sharp edges and cold fire. She opened her mouth and sang. The notes came out black and silver, visible in the air like ribbons of smoke and starlight. They wrapped around the creature, around Malachai's possessed form, tightening with each verse. The thing screamed, not in pain, in rage. "What are you doing? This isn't..." But Solène kept singing, kept weaving the binding magic tighter and tighter. The creature fought, clawing at the invisible chains, but the binding melody was designed for exactly this: to trap darkness, to seal corruption, to anchor evil in place long enough for light to find it. The final note tore from Solène's throat. The creature shrieked as the binding locked into place, forcing it deeper into Malachai's mind, trapping it there. Malachai collapsed unconscious but breathing, and Solen's voice shattered. Not gone, but sealed, locked behind invisible walls she could feel but not break. She opened her mouth to scream to call for help. Nothing came out. Her voice was gone. Horror crashed through her. She tried again, but only silence emerged. 48 hours, Thessaly had said. The binding melody would seal her voice for 48 hours, long enough for the creature to be contained, but also long enough for her to be utterly defenseless. The door burst open. Caden stood there, wild-eyed and bloodied, Thorn at his side. They'd fought their way up here through guards and enforcers and who knew what else. His eyes found hers, saw Malachai's unconscious form, saw Solen's terror. What happened? He demanded, crossing to her in 3 long strides. She opened her mouth. Nothing. Fear flickered across his face. Solen, talk to me. She shook her head frantically, pointing at her throat. Understanding dawned, followed by rage so pure it made the air shimmer. What did he do to you? She grabbed his arm, pulling him close, pressed her hand to her throat, then pointed at Malachai. Caden's jaw clenched. He made you sing. She nodded. And you bound him. Not a question. He could see the faint remnants of binding magic still clinging to Malachai's form. She nodded again. Caden pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with desperate gentleness. You sacrificed your voice to stop him, he whispered against her hair. You trapped the Dreadborn's possession. She clung to him, trembling, unable to speak, unable to explain. Thorn knelt beside Malachai, checking his pulse. He's alive, but there's something dark in him. I can feel it. The Dreadborn King is using him as a vessel, Caden said. Solen bound it, but I don't know for how long. Thorn's expression turned grim. Then we need to move, now, before it breaks free. Caden helped Solen to her feet. She swayed, exhausted and voiceless and terrified. He steadied her, his hands gentle, despite the violence still singing in his veins. Can you walk? She nodded. Then we run. So they fled the tower, Caden and Thorn, cutting through any opposition with brutal efficiency. The remaining council members were in chaos, some arguing to pursue them, others demanding answers about Malachai. But no one stopped them. They reached the forest as the sun set, painting the sky in blood and fire. Thessaly waited there, freed by loyal wolves who had sensed the corruption in the council. She saw Solen's face and knew immediately. Oh, child, she breathed. What did you do? Solen couldn't answer, could only fall into her grandmother's arms and shake. The binding melody, Thessaly said, understanding. You sealed your own voice to trap it. Caden's hand found Solen's, threading their fingers together. How long? He asked. 48 hours, Thessaly said. Then it will fade and her voice will return. Will the binding on the creature hold that long? I don't know. Thessaly's expression was grave. The Dreadborn King is ancient and powerful. If he breaks free before her voice returns, he won't. Caden's voice was iron, because we'll be far from here by then. Where will we go? Thorn asked. The Whispering Woods, old territory protected by the elders. If we can reach it, we'll be safe long enough to plan our next move. They began walking, moving quickly through darkening forest. Solen's mind raced even as her voice remained silent. She had bought them time, yes. But at what cost? Without her voice, she was defenseless, vulnerable, and Caden. She looked at him, at the hard set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. He felt it too, the bond pulling taut between them, strained by her silence. Hours passed in tense quiet. They made camp in a small clearing, building no fire, taking turns on watch. Solen sat against a tree, her grandmother beside her. Thessaly produced paper and charcoal, handing them to Solen. Write, she said gently. You may not have your voice, but you still have words. Solen's hand trembled as she wrote, I'm sorry. For what? For sacrificing my voice, for putting everyone in danger. Thessaly's eyes softened. You did what you had to do, what I should have done 40 years ago. You stopped a monster before it could fully awaken. That took courage. It took fear. Sometimes they're the same thing. Across the clearing, Caden watched them. His eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, tracking Solen's every movement. Thorn sat beside him, sharpening her blade. You're going to wear a hole in her with that stare, Thorn said quietly. I can't help it. Caden's voice was rough. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to protect her, but I can't protect her from this. Can't fight silence with claws. You can stand beside her, let her know she's not alone. Is that enough? It's all any of us can do. Caden stood crossing to where Solen sat. He lowered himself beside her, close but not crowding. May I? He gestured to the paper. She handed it to him. He read her words, his expression tightening. Then he took the charcoal and wrote below her message. You have nothing to apologize for. You saved lives tonight. mine included. She met his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the absolute belief. She wrote again, her hands shaking, "Why do you protect me? You barely know me." Caden's jaw clenched. For a long moment, he didn't write, just stared at the paper like it held answers he wasn't ready to give. Then his hand moved. "Because 10 years ago, I was captured by the Dreadborn King. He tried to turn me into his vessel to corrupt me the way he corrupted Malachi. He filled my mind with darkness and rage and the certainty that I would never be anything but a monster." Selene's breath caught. I escaped. Barely. But I carried pieces of that darkness inside me for years. My wolf became unstable, violent. I was losing control and no one could help me. No healer, no alpha, no magic. Until you. When you sang, the darkness went quiet for the first time in a decade. Your voice didn't just heal my wounds. It healed something I thought was broken beyond repair. So I protect you because you gave me back my soul. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure nothing harms you the way the darkness harmed me. Tears burned behind Selene's eyes. She wrote one word. Together, Caden's hand covered hers, warm and solid and achingly gentle. Together, he wrote, "For as long as you'll have me." She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her like she was something precious. And for a moment, despite the silence in her throat, despite the danger hunting them, despite everything, Selene felt safe. Thessaly watched from across the clearing, her expression soft with understanding and old grief. "They'll need each other for what's coming," she murmured to Thorn. "What is coming? War." Thessaly's voice hardened. "The Dreadborn King won't stop. Not until he has what he wants. And what he wants is her voice, her power, her song. Then we'll stop him. How we're four people against an ancient evil that's been planning its resurrection for centuries. We're four people who have something he doesn't." Thorn's eyes glowed faintly. "Hope, love, the belief that we can win. That makes us more dangerous than any army." Above them, the moon rose full and bright, and in the distance, barely audible, a whisper threaded through the wind. "Soon," the darkness promised. "Soon I will be free. And when I am little songkeeper, your voice will be mine. Your power will resurrect me, and the world will kneel before the Dreadborn King reborn." But Selene didn't hear it. She sat wrapped in Caden's arms, her hand in his, their hearts beating in rhythm. And for tonight, that was enough. 48 hours felt like an eternity, wrapped in silence. Selene woke on the second morning of her voicelessness to the sound of rain drumming against leaves. The whispering woods lived up to their name, every branch and root seeming to murmur secrets she couldn't quite hear. Caden sat nearby watching her with those golden eyes that never seemed to dim. He hadn't slept. She knew because every time she'd stirred during the night, he'd been there alert and protective, a wolf standing guard over something precious. She sat up slowly, her throat aching with phantom pain. The urge to speak, to sing, to make any sound at all, pressed against her like a physical weight. Caden offered her the paper and charcoal without words. She wrote, "How much longer?" He checked the sky, calculating. 12 hours, maybe less. The binding on Malachi holding? Barely. His expression darkened. Thorn felt tremors in the magic last night. The Dreadborn is testing its cage. Solene's hands trembled. 12 hours. She had to remain silent for 12 more hours while an ancient evil fought to break free. Thessaly emerged from the makeshift shelter, her silver hair damp from the rain. She looked older in the gray morning light, worn down by decades of running and hiding. "We need to move," she said. "The ancient grove is still 2 days' journey on foot." "We don't have 2 days," Thorn said, sharpening her blade with methodical precision. "If the Dreadborn breaks free before we reach the grove, it won't." Caden's voice was iron. "Because we're not walking." He stood moving to the edge of the clearing, threw his head back and howled. The sound echoed through the forest, carrying power and authority and an unmistakable command. Within minutes, wolves appeared. Not just any wolves. The largest Selene had ever seen, their fur ranging from smoke gray to deepest black. They moved with the fluid grace of predators who knew they stood at the top of the food chain. They shifted as they approached, becoming men and women who knelt before Caden with respect that bordered on reverence. Alpha Baum, the largest, said, a man with scars crossing his chest like a roadmap of battles survived. "You called. We answer." "I need runners," Caden said. "Fast ones, strong ones, wolves who can carry passengers and reach the ancient grove before sunset tomorrow. You ask us to enter Elder territory. I ask you to help me protect the Voxer." Caden's eyes blazed. "The one whose voice can save us all, or destroy us if the Dreadborn claims her first." The wolves exchanged glances. Then as one they bowed deeper. "We run," the scarred man said, "for the Voxer, for the pack, for the future." Within the hour they were moving. Selene rode on the back of a massive gray wolf, her hands buried in fur, softer than it looked. The wolf ran with a gait so smooth she barely felt the ground passing beneath them. Caden ran beside her in wolf form, silver and magnificent, his golden eyes checking on her constantly. The forest blurred past. Trees became streaks of green and brown. The rain stopped, giving way to pale sunlight that filtered through leaves and scattered coins of light. They ran through the day and into the night, stopping only briefly to rest in water. Selene's voice remained locked, silent. But something else was growing inside her chest. Not sound, pressure, like steam building in a sealed kettle waiting for release. The bond with Caden pulsed stronger with each mile they covered. She could feel him now even when she couldn't see him. His heartbeat, his breath, his absolute determination to keep her safe. It should have terrified her, this connection that grew deeper without permission. Instead, it felt like coming home. The ancient grove appeared at dawn. Stone pillars older than memory rose from the earth, arranged in a perfect circle. Moss covered them in velvet green, and carved into each pillar were runes that glowed faintly silver in the early light. This was sacred ground. Even Selene, human and untrained, could feel the power thrumming beneath her feet. The wolves stopped at the edge of the circle, unwilling to go further without permission. A figure materialized in the center, not walking in, simply appearing as if he'd been there all along, and they were only now allowed to see him. Garen, the ancient elder wolf composed of smoke and starlight and memory. "You come seeking the right of hearts," he said, his voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "We do," Caden answered, shifting back to human form. "The right is not given lightly. It requires sacrifice. Pain, the permanent joining of two souls into one bond that cannot be severed even by death." Garen's silver eyes fixed on Selene. "Are you prepared for this, Songkeeper?" Selene stepped forward. She couldn't speak, but she met his gaze steadily and nodded once. "Words are not needed here," Garen said gently. "Only truth, and your truth sings loud enough for all to hear." He gestured to the center of the circle where a flat stone altar waited. Thessaly moved forward, producing items from her pack. A silver knife, a bowl carved from ancient wood, herbs that smelled of moonlight in wild places. "The right of hearts," she said, her voice formal and heavy with ritual, "requires blood given freely, soul offered willingly, love acknowledged openly." She looked at Selene and Caden. "Once begun, there is no turning back. The bond will complete, or it will consume you both. There is no middle ground." "We understand," Caden said. Selene nodded again, her heart racing. Thessaly began the preparation, arranging the herbs around the altar in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Ancient symbols. Old magic. "Kneel," she commanded. "Face each other." Selene and Caden knelt on opposite sides of the altar. Their eyes met and the world contracted to just this. Just them. Thessaly placed the silver knife between them. "Blood first," she said, "to bind flesh to flesh." Caden took the knife without hesitation, drew it across his palm in one clean motion. Blood welled dark and rich, dripping onto the altar stone. He offered the knife to Selene. Her hand trembled as she took it. The blade was cold against her skin. She pressed down, felt the sharp kiss of pain, watched her own blood join his. Their palms met over the altar, blood mingling, warm and wet and alive. Power exploded through the circle. Not violent, inevitable. Selene gasped as visions crashed through her mind. She saw other couples, other Voxers and Alphas kneeling at this same altar across centuries. Some survived, some didn't, but all of them looked at each other the same way she and Caden did now, like they were witnessing the only thing that mattered. The vision shifted, showed her moments not yet lived, futures possible but not certain, her and Caden building something together. A sanctuary, a home, a place where wolves learn to resist darkness and humans learn not to fear. She saw battles, saw victories and losses, saw the silver thread connecting their hearts growing stronger with each passing season. She saw herself teaching young Songkeepers, passing on what Thessaly had taught her. She saw Caden beside her always, steadfast, fierce, hers, soul second. Thessaly's voice cut through the visions, to bind spirit to spirit. Garen moved closer, placing one translucent hand over their joined palms. "Caden Alpha of the Northern Pack, do you give your soul freely to this Voxer?" "I do." His voice was steady, certain. "Everything I am, everything I have, everything I will ever be, I give it all to her." "Selene and Voxer and Songkeeper, do you accept his soul into your keeping?" Selene couldn't speak, but she could feel the answer burning in her chest, demanding release. She squeezed Caden's hand and nodded. Light erupted from their joined palms, golden and pure and blindingly bright. Selene felt something tear open inside her chest. Not painful, like a door she'd kept locked finally swinging wide. Caden's soul poured into her and hers into him. She felt his strength, his courage, his bone-deep certainty that she was worth dying for. He felt her compassion, her determination, her refusal to let darkness win without a fight. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. A golden thread appeared between them, visible and shimmering, connecting heart to heart. And Solen's voice returned, not gently, not gradually, all at once like a dam breaking. She gasped, and the sound was music, was power, was every note she'd kept locked away for 48 hours pouring out in a rush. Caden, she whispered, and his name on her lips made the thread between them glow brighter. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. I feel you, he breathed. Everything? Your fear, your hope, your love, she finished, because it was true and there was no point denying it anymore. I love you. The words hung in the air, trembling and raw and absolutely real. Caden's breath caught. Solen, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I've known, he said softly, since the moment you knelt beside me in that clearing and chose to save a monster. I've loved you since then. I just didn't have the words. He kissed her, gentle and fierce and achingly tender. And the bond between them blazed like a star. The moment shattered. A howl tore through the grove, not from the loyal wolves who'd brought them here, from something else, something wrong. Darkness poured into the clearing like oil, thick and choking and alive. Shadow creatures formed from the blackness, wolves but twisted. Their eyes burned sickly yellow. Their mouths dripped venom that hissed when it hit the ground. Possessed. The Dreadborn broke free, Thorn snarled, already shifting. Caden moved in front of Solen, his body a shield. How many? Too many. Thorn's wolf form rippled with tension. 20 at least. The shadow creatures advanced, moving with unnatural coordination, and behind them, stepping through the darkness like a king returning to his throne, came Malachi. But not Malachi, not anymore. His eyes burned full yellow. His skin was two pale veins visible beneath like black rivers. When he smiled, his teeth were too sharp, too many. Little Songkeeper, the Dreadborn said through Malachi's mouth. Did you think 48 hours would be enough? Did you think you could run from me? Stay back, Caden growled, or what, you'll fight me. The Dreadborn laughed, and the sound was layered with screams. You who I already corrupted once, you're still mine, Caden. You've always been mine. You're wrong. Am I? The Dreadborn's hand lifted and dark magic lashed out like a whip. It struck Caden, wrapping around him, trying to dig into the places where darkness had once lived. But it found nothing. No foothold, no corruption to feed on. The bond with Solen had burned it all away. The Dreadborn's eyes widened. Impossible. The corruption was permanent. Nothing could. His gaze snapped to Solen. Your song healed him completely. She saved me, Caden said, in every way that matters. Then I'll take her from you. The Dreadborn gestured, and the shadow creatures lunged. Battle erupted. Caden shifted his silver wolf form, tearing into the possessed with brutal efficiency. Thorn fought beside him, her gray fur streaked with black blood. The loyal wolves joined the fight, outnumbered but fierce. Solen stood at the altar, weaponless and vulnerable. A shadow creature broke through the line, charging straight for her. Thessaly stepped in its path, a silver blade flashing in her hand. She moved like someone half her age, decades of suppressed training flooding back. The blade found the creature's throat. It dissolved into smoke. But more were coming. Too many. Solen, Thessaly shouted. The Severance melody. It's the only way. I don't know it. Yes, you do. Thessaly cut down another creature. I sang it to you every night when you were a child. You know it in your bones. You just have to remember. Solen closed her eyes, reaching for the deepest part of herself. And there it was. A melody she'd heard in dreams. Dark and beautiful and terrible. The Severance melody. But Thessaly had said it came with a cost. To sing it, she would have to stand alone in the heart of darkness. Let it surround her. Let it try to consume her. And trust that the bond with Caden would keep her alive long enough to finish. Caden, she called out. His wolf head turned, golden eyes finding hers even in the chaos. I have to go into the darkness, she said. Alone. She felt his refusal through the bond before she heard his growl. I have to, she insisted. It's the only way to stop him. I won't let you die. The thought came through the bonding clear as speech. I'm not planning to, she sent back. But I need you to trust me. His eyes held hers for one long moment. Then he turned back to the fight, tearing into the possessed with renewed fury, clearing a path. Solen ran straight toward the Dreadborn, straight toward the darkness pouring off him in waves. Yes, the creature hissed. Come to me, little songkeeper. Let me show you what true power feels like. Darkness wrapped around her like a fist. Cold, suffocating, trying to pull her down into nothing. But the bond with Caden burned in her chest, a golden thread anchoring her to life. She opened her mouth and sang. The severance melody poured out of her throat, dark and bright at once. Notes that shouldn't exist together wove into impossible harmony. The darkness recoiled. "What are you doing?" the Dreadborn shrieked. Selene kept singing. The melody grew stronger, pulling power from the bond, from the earth, from the ancient magic sleeping in the grove. Light exploded from her throat, golden and pure and absolutely merciless. The severance melody did what it was designed to do. It severed sound from darkness itself. The Dreadborn's scream was silent. His form flickered, losing cohesion, as the magic holding him together unraveled. The possessed wolves collapsed, freed from corruption that could no longer speak its commands. But the cost was high. A shadow blade materialized in the Dreadborn's hand. His final desperate attack. He drove it towards Selene's heart. Thessaly threw herself between them. The blade pierced her chest, drove deep, emerged from her back in a spray of crimson. No, Selene's song faltered. Thessaly fell, and Selene caught her, lowering her grandmother to the ground with shaking hands. "Keep singing." Thessaly gasped, blood on her lips. "Don't stop, finish it." Tears streamed down Selene's face, but she obeyed. The severance melody rose again, stronger, now fueled by grief and love and absolute fury. The Dreadborn's form shattered. His essence tried to escape, to flee into shadow and hide. But Garen was there, ancient and implacable. The elder wolf's form expanded, becoming a cage of silver light. The Dreadborn's essence slammed into it, trapped. "You will harm no one else," Garen said. "Not in this age, not in any age." He pressed the Dreadborn's essence into a stone that appeared in his palm, black as midnight, pulsing with contained fury. "Sealed," Garen said, "but not destroyed. Evil this old cannot be truly killed, only contained." Selene barely heard him. She knelt beside Thessaly, cradling her grandmother's head in her lap. "You did it," Thessaly whispered, her voice fading. "You finished what I couldn't." "Don't leave me," Selene begged. "Please, I just got you back." "You never lost me, little bird." Thessaly's hand found Selene's cheek. "I'm in every song you sing, every note you breathe. I'm there." Caden knelt beside them, human again, his hand finding Selene's shoulder. Thessaly's eyes found his. "Protect her, love her, give her the life I never had." "I swear it," Caden said, his voice breaking. "Good." Thessaly smiled. "Then I can rest." Her eyes closed, her breath stopped, and Selene felt the moment her grandmother's spirit left, rising like music into the dawn. She sobbed, clutching the body that no longer held the woman she loved. Caden pulled her against him, holding her while she shattered. The grove fell silent. Every wolf, loyal and freed from possession, bowed their heads in respect. Garen's voice was gentle when he spoke. "She died a warrior's death, protecting what she loved. There is no greater honor." It didn't help, but slowly as the sun rose higher and the last of the darkness burned away, Selene's tears slowed. She looked at the stone in Garen's hand, the prison holding the Dreadborn. "What happens to that?" she asked. "It will be hidden, guarded, for as long as this world exists." Garen's eyes met hers. "You should know, sealed is not destroyed." Selene's voice was steel wrapped in grief. "Then we'll be ready if anyone tries to free him." The council came at midday. Not all 7. Malachai was carried on a stretcher, unconscious, but freed from possession. The corruption had nearly killed him. The remaining 4 counselors stood at the edge of the grove, staring at Selene with something between fear and awe. The eldest, a woman with white hair and storm-gray eyes, stepped forward. "Selene, first songkeeper," she said formally. "You have done what should have been impossible. You destroyed the Dreadborn King's resurrection. You freed the possessed. You proved the power of the Voxer bond." "I didn't do it alone," Selene said, her hand finding Caden's. "No, you had help, had love, had courage." The counselor knelt. "And for that we owe you more than we can repay. We offer you formal recognition, protection, a place among us." "I don't want a place among you," Selene said quietly. "I don't want to be controlled or regulated or told what I can and cannot do with my voice." The counselor's eyes widened. "Then what do you want?" "I want freedom. I want to train others like me if they exist. I want to help wolves resist darkness, not serve anyone's political agenda." Selene lifted her chin. "I want to choose my own path." "That's not one of the options we prepared." "Then prepare new options." Selene's voice didn't rise, but it carried absolute certainty. "Because I am Voxer, I am Songkeeper, and I will not be caged." Silence stretched. Then the counselor smiled, sad and proud at once. You sound like someone I knew once, she said softly. A songkeeper from 40 years ago. She had that same fire. Thessaly was my grandmother. I know. I was there the day the council tore her from her alpha. The counselor's expression turned pained. I have regretted it every day since. I will not make that mistake again. She stood gesturing to the other counselors. They conferred in whispers. Then they turned back. We accept your terms, the eldest said. You will be songkeeper free and unfettered. You and your alpha will lead as equals. The council will support you, not command you, and in return you will help us if darkness rises again. Not if, Selene said. When, and yes, I'll help. The counselors bowed. One of them approached with a silver circlet, delicate and beautiful. The mark of the first songkeeper, he said. Will you accept it? Selene looked at Caden. He nodded slightly. She allowed them to place the circlet on her head. It was lighter than she expected, warm against her skin. Power rippled through the grove. Every wolf present felt it. The official recognition. The bond acknowledged. The new age beginning. Garen spoke one last time before he faded. Songkeeper and Alpha, together you are stronger than apart. Remember that in the dark days ahead. Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of rain and wild places. 3 months later, the cottage had been rebuilt, expanded, transformed into something between a home and a sanctuary. Young wolves came from across the territories to train, to learn how to resist corruption, how to recognize darkness before it took root. Selene taught them with patience and kindness and an iron will that tolerated no weakness. Caden stood beside her always, teaching combat, strategy, the hard truths about survival. Thorn served as their beta, managing the logistics of running a sanctuary that grew larger every week. On a clear spring morning, Selene stood in the garden where Thessaly had once grown moonbell flowers. They bloomed now, silver and beautiful, thriving under her care. Caden found her there, as he always did when she grew quiet. You're thinking about her, he said softly. Always. Selene touched a moonbell petal. I wish she could see this. See what we built. She does. Caden's arms wrapped around her from behind. I feel her sometimes, in the wind, in the quiet moments. She's proud of you. How do you know? Because I'm proud of you. And if I can feel that through the bond, imagine what she feels from wherever spirits go. Selene leaned back against him, letting his warmth chase away the lingering sadness. I love you, she said. Simple, true, never getting old. I love you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. My songkeeper, my partner. She turned in his arms, meeting his golden eyes. Sing for me, he asked. She smiled, opened her mouth. Let the melody pour out, not the opening, not the binding, not the severance, just a song, pure and gentle and full of hope. Around them, the garden bloomed brighter. The wolves in the training yard paused to listen. The forest itself seemed to lean closer, drawn by the beauty of a voice that had saved them all. When the song ended, Caden whispered one word. Home. Selene echoed it. Home. Above them, the sun shone bright and warm. And if a faint spirit shape stood at the garden's edge, silver-haired and smiling, no one saw it, no one except the wolves who howled their greeting to a songkeeper who had finally found peace. Far away in the council chambers, the black stone containing the Dreadborn's essence sat in its vault, perfectly still, perfectly sealed. But if anyone had been listening closely in those deep underground chambers, they might have heard the faintest whisper threading through stone and darkness. Not a threat, just a patient promise that evil once sealed would wait as long as it took. For now, though, the world was safe. Selene stood in her garden with the alpha she loved, surrounded by wolves she was teaching to be brave, living the life her grandmother had never had the chance to live. And it was enough, more than enough, it was everything.